Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a DIY Dollar Tree pumpkin makeover. We're going to make over 3 little pumpkins. Unfortunately, we're going to make over one of these pumpkins, which I know is readily available. People have it in their stock. We're also going to make over a little velvet pumpkin. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of that. We're going to use this scarf that I found at the Dollar Tree. I just love the houndstooth in this autumn color. And we're going to also use a very similar color of yarn. Again, same from the Dollar Tree. It's the Just Plain yarn. I think it's called Just Yarn. And we're going to use some black and white buffalo check ribbon, less than 1 roll. We're also going to use this wood pumpkin, this 3D wood pumpkin. Is going to be the third makeover. And then we're going to use some Mod Podge. And then if you want to use paint, you can use paint. If you want to use ribbon to decorate with, you can do that as well. But pretty much we're just going to use those things. A little burlap too, if we want. That's an option. And a little rope if you want. That's an option too. So the first thing I wanted to do is to make sure that these ribbons were wide enough, and they are, believe it or not. The 3 sections of this pumpkin are perfect to have these this buffalo check ribbon, this 2.5-inch buffalo check ribbon. Now the thing I want to do is I want to emphasize that we need to take the wires out just to create it, make it to basically look like fabric. Now you can paint the inset, which is the background, white if you want to. That's optional. If you want to leave it wood tone, that's optional. If you want to paint underneath the ribbon white, that's optional as well. All of these things are just different ways to enhance the look of the pumpkin. But I think it would look really cute if it was stained kind of like the stem. It would really make the buffalo check stand out. But depending on what your decor is, that's what you really want to go for. My decor is not. My decor is more of these like light browns, earthy tones with the black and white buffalo check for autumn. I really do like it. Okay, so all I'm doing is laying some Mod Podge down. Now I thought at first I really wanted to, I wasn't sure if I wanted the stripes to go in the direction of the pumpkin to accentuate its curves or just go straight up and down like if I was doing a piece of scrapbook paper. So I decided to make it go curved. It fits on the space a little bit better, but if you want to just lay it straight, you can. You can also butt these up to each other. So if you cut off part of the black, once you pull the wire out, you can cut off the black edge and you can match it up to another piece of ribbon, which is easy to do as well. So when I Mod Podge fabric, I like to put some down, then I like to lay the fabric down and then put some on top. That's just the way I like to do it. And I like to let it dry before I cut it. It makes it so much easier if you let it get stiff and dry before you cut the fabric. Okay, when it's wet and it wants to take, the scissors wants to take it with it in the whole bit. So that's why I'm doing it in sections and not really cleaning up the pieces. Okay. Now I never really thought about trying to match the horizontal lines. It just wasn't important to me. Obviously, if it's important to you, you can go ahead and do that. Just get a little ruler and you can match up a gray horizontal line or a white horizontal line just to make sure it's like nice and even. But you don't have to do that. I think it looks more country quilty this way, you know, scrappy, like grandma's got scraps, pieces left over, and you just try to use whatever we had kind of thing. Now, I have not been able to find any autumn stuff in my Dollar Trees just yet, so that's why I'm using things that were out last year. You can pick up some new things if you have some new ideas. I don't know if they're going to have different sizes and shapes of pumpkins. You can do that as well. I don't know if they'll have different scarves this year. Just keep that in mind. These are just simple ideas. Now, I'm not trimming this perfectly. I'm just cutting off all the extra that doesn't have Mod Podge on it. Just to like let it dry. Like I said, it's much easier to go in with a sharp scissor or an X-Acto knife once the Mod Podge is dry, and you can get a really clean cut along the edge. So that's why I'm kind of cutting it a little bit bigger than the space, but I need to clear out that stuff out of the way so I can do the piece in the middle. Now, as I mentioned a minute ago, we're going to piece together 2 pieces of the ribbon. The middle space is a little wider. So what we're basically going to do is going to cut a piece that's long enough. We're going to pull out its wire, cut off its black stitching, and we're going to do that to another piece that matches, basically. Just lay one down, and then you can go ahead and you can cut the piece next to it. Now, for this particular project, we're going to put the Mod Podge down in the middle. Mod Podge. Don't get it twisted. We're going to lay one piece of ribbon down whole. And again, the wires have been removed from these ribbons already. And then we're going to lay the cut piece next to it just to make it a little easier to basically cut out a step. So plenty of Mod Podge down. And then the first piece we're cutting off right next to the stitching. I found that if you cut right next to the stitching that the two pieces butt up to each other. So we're going to lay the one piece down and then do the same thing right next to it. So you can kind of see that I wasn't really trying to line everything up perfectly, but it looked like I was trying to get it just sort of close. But you don't have to do that. And I think this would also be super adorable with different fabrics. Like the Dollar Tree has this buffalo plaid in a maroon color. I think that would be so neat. If you're doing it for Halloween, you can do like the black and white buffalo check as well as maybe the black and skulls or the black and spiders would be really cool as well. But of course, you know me, my farmhouse, my black and white just needs to do it like this regular. Now, once you have this pumpkin all done, there's tons of things you can do to enhance it that we've done on the channel plenty of times. You can glue words down to it. You could do verbiage down to it. You can put initials on it. You can stick another sign on top of it. You can use it as like a background and just put one of those little Dollar Tree little hot autumn signs on it. The possibilities are sort of endless. But today we're just going to show the base. We're going to show how we do this. And I think we're going to go ahead and make a stand. But I'll also talk through some alternatives to that. Now, just like before, we're going to go ahead and cut away all the extra pieces, but not get the perfect trim just yet. And we're going to get the perfect trim once the Mod Podge has set completely. But what I like about this is because those pieces that we're covering are elevated above it, or embossed on it, you can run your scissor in the little crevice between the spaces and just really get cut close without cutting actually right up to the thing, which is really good. So just clean up a little extra Mod Podge. Once you cut, sometimes when it's wet, it lifts up. So you just want to make sure it's stuck down there really well. I like to take my Mod Podge brush and wrap it in a wipe, a baby wipe, or a flushable wipe or something to keep it moist between usage. So if I want to use it again in a little while, it'll also help keep it moist before I go to wash it. Because when I go to wash it, it'll be a few minutes, and if you don't keep it moist, it will dry out and get icky on you, and bleh, nobody wants that. You throw it in the garbage, and even though they're cheap, you don't want to be wasteful. Okay. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you that I'm doing here is I'm taking my small scissors. These are Westcott small scissors from the Dollar Tree, and I'm taking an emery board, and I'm just giving them a sharpening and a cleaning. It'll help pick up whatever extra goop and glue might be stuck to them from projects in the past, but it'll also make them a little extra sharp to get onto that fabric, which you really want the fabric to be dry, and you want the scissor to be nice and sharp. Now, I will tell you in full disclosure, this wasn't completely dry. I only let it sit for about 15 minutes. So it does give me a little trouble, but I kind of almost was like, maybe I should show them what it looks like if you try to cut it too soon. But yeah, I didn't make that many mistakes. So then it was no point in showing you that. But sometimes it just gets lifted away from the material. So you just want to be careful. Let it dry fully. Try to use the bottom of the scissor up to the area where you're cutting. We've talked about that before, right? The bottom of your scissor towards the inside of your work if you're a righty and you're using a right-hand scissor. And the same if you're a lefty and using a left-hand scissor. Now, one of the reasons we wanted to keep that Mod Podge brush wet with a little bit of Mod Podge on it is once we cut, we do want to go ahead and just put a protective layer down over the edges of all the cut fabric. You want to do this whether it's wet or dry. It just helps a little bit extra. Okay? And now we're going to add a bow. I just took a little bit of the small gingham buffalo check. It's gingham, but the small little baby gingham from the Dollar Tree. I just tied a little bow. Now this does have a hole for hanging. If you're not going to hang it, you can just go ahead and cover the bow, the hole with the bow, which is what I'm doing here. But if you plan on hanging it, you can just go ahead and use that to insert a piece of jute or whatever through. Now, when we hang these, we like to use Jenga blocks. They have all kinds of things now. They have these little wood blocks that you could use, popsicle sticks, whatever you can use to make a support in the back. Now, some people use Dollar Tree picture frames for a lot of things, but they pull the easel back off. You can always use that if you try to keep the hinge attached to the easel back as opposed to the back of the frame. It makes it very easy to use those for supports as well. So now you can see here I'm just doing trimming, cutting, fixing up with a little glue just to make it neat and pretty. You don't have to do this. This is just me being extra, but I wanted to show you that definitely you can do it. If I'm going to be extra, you could be extra. That's okay. We're allowed to be extra. We are totally allowed to be extra. Now, the last thing we're going to do is just one finishing touch that I thought looked really nice. Is to take a fat Sharpie marker. This is the fake Dollar Tree Sharpie by Jot. And I like to just take it along that edge. Because it is relief, because it is 3D, you can just hold it sideways and go along the edge of that raised area. It just gives it sort of it kind of does give it an enamel look, but not really. Not enamel look, but enamel feel. But also just gives it a nice finished line. It gives you a nice finished line to work with. Now, if you do happen to go over and you haven't painted it, you can just really sand it off. It just makes a lot of sanding because it's, Sharpie absorbs into the wood pretty well. But if you're painted the surface, then you can always just paint over it if your marker slips or any of that stuff. So I don't know if you guys are looking that I use my ring finger. I hold the marker between my thumb, index finger, and middle finger, and then I use my ring finger as a guide along the wood surface just to hold it so evenly spaced away from the work, basically. Okay, and I did that to all of the reliefed edges. I was contemplating doing it to the outside of the pumpkin, but I was like, nah, I think that looks good like this. But, that could be an option as well if you guys are interested, all right? Another thing that would be cute is if this pumpkin had a black stem, which I decided just to leave it brown. But I kind of feel like it would have been cute if I did that. But what I decided to do is just run the marker along some of the inset areas just to give it more of an aged look. And we're just going to go back over it with some ivory paint just to dull that marker down, just to make it look like an aged wood. Layers, layers. You know how we do that, right? You know how we do, right? Yeah. Because we're weird. But this is how it looks when it's all done. I did go ahead and put some blocks behind it so it stands up. But again, we've done that on our channel lots and lots. And it looks really cute painted with that agey look. Now for the next pumpkin, we're just going to take one of the standard orange pumpkins. I've already pulled out the stem and I've already painted it white. The reason we want to paint this white is because we're going to cover it with this scarf that does have a white background, which means if you don't have a white base under it, it will show whatever color come through. So this is the inside of mesh tubing. These like hard cardboard tubes that I use. I kind of save them. This is the perfect application to save it. This scarf is not very wide, this material. So I wanted to make sure that I went around several times. So I made the hole at the top and the bottom really, really big. We're going to tuck the fabric in so that we have a really pretty look of a fabric pumpkin, but really to make it easy for everybody, honestly. So we're going to go ahead and just start. I like to cut it on the seam because I don't like to be wasteful. I know, I'm weird. This is an infinity scarf, so it's one long piece of fabric that has a seam sewed just at one point. So I like to go ahead and cut where the seam is, just again, not to be wasteful. And it is fleece, so you don't have to worry about finishing it and having it fray on you or anything like that. So as you can see, I'm testing out the fabric to see if it's wide enough, now that I have the scarf open, if it's wide enough to go actually around the pumpkin top and bottom. And it looks like it's going to work that way for us. We're probably going to have to use some hot glue to secure it in the top and the bottom while we're working. But you might not have to. You might just be able to wrap it around. And once you get a lot of fabric stuffed in the hole, then it'll stay. But again, that's entirely up to how you want to do it. Now, I did want to use hot glue because I like to be able to keep the fabric in the ridges. Sometimes when you cover these pumpkins in fabric, they'll cover over the pumpkin ridges, between the pumpkin sections, and then it doesn't really look like a pumpkin as much. So I like to be able to use the gluing method just to keep them into the indents of the pumpkin, okay? Now, when you get to the end, I want to make it neat, so I fold over the edge and I'm trying to line up the pattern the best I can. I'm not really going to match like a houndstooth section by houndstooth section, but I want to keep like that row straight. The reason I wanted to do that is because I'll ensure that there's as much fabric at the top and the bottom throughout the whole thing, so I'll be able to actually stuff it inside those holes. But we did make those holes nice and big, and because we were able to get all the fabric at once, we don't really have to add glue into the middle if we don't want to. But if you guys feel like you want to secure it with some hot glue, then you go ahead and do that. And then repeat the same thing for the bottom. The bottom has more fabric than the top for some reason, because I'm odd. But the real reason is because we're going to stick a stem in the top, and that's going to kind of support the fabric. In the bottom, it's just going to be like a willy-nilly thing. So we add a little hot glue and then push it down willy-nilly. Now that's the stem it came with. That's not the stem that's going to stay. I like this white nautical rope that they came out with. The new cotton nautical rope. We're just going to use a piece of that. And we're going to use it, and then we're going to like untwist the bottom to go around the pumpkin stem, and then we're going to twist up the top to make it like a swirly, pointy sort of stem. Like some decorative pumpkins have pointy, swirly stems, don't they? Yeah, they do. Oh, goodness. God bless me. All right. Actually, I want to say God bless you guys because you're here for me and you're listening to all this crazy rant. So, as you can see, I've cut off like a section, and now we're just untwisting it. What I mean is, okay, the rope is made out of 3 strands. I want the pumpkin stem at the top to be skinny. So what I've done is I've taken 2 inches and I've cut 2 of the sections off of 2 inches. So we only have at the very, very tip of the stem, we have 1 section of the twisted rope. Then I'm going to go another 2 inches and just cut off 1 of those other pieces. And we're going to twist them together. We're going to use hot glue to keep them twisted together. But basically what this is going to do is going to gradually make the pumpkin stem fatter and fatter until we get down to the actual, like where we're going to attach it to the pumpkin. I hope that makes better sense. I tried to slow it down here a little bit for you so you could see what I was doing. Now this would be a good place to use your hot fingers that they sell at the Dollar Tree, those little finger protectors. But I'm using my glue gun on low temp. So I decided how long I want my pumpkin stem to be. Now, if you want to make your pumpkin stem twistable or repositionable over the years, you can go ahead and insert a piece of craft wire up the center of all the swirls. It's totally 100% something you can do. Very, very easy. This way you can actually manipulate its shape as opposed to just letting it be floppy. That's just a suggestion from me to you. Now, when we get to the bottom of the pumpkin stem, we want to go ahead and open the rope up. But we're going to, as you saw, I stuck a piece of hot glue about 1 inch up because I don't want it to continue to unravel. I want the rope to stay together, but I want to use those unraveled ends to cover over this like green stem that they give you with the pumpkin. Like I said, that's just going to help keep the fabric in place, and this rope is going to help disguise it so it fits nicely around. And we're just going to make it nice and neat and flat. And there you go. So now you can see if we had wire in there, we can go ahead and bend it or loop it onto itself, and that would be super cute. Now I'm just taking a tiny piece of burlap fabric. This is burlap ribbon. I believe this ribbon's from Walmart, but I'm not 100% sure. It might have just been a scrap that I had laying around. Oh, nope, that's Dollar Tree's ribbon. Never mind. I see what it is. It's Dollar Tree's wire-edged burlap ribbon. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it into a pumpkin leaf type shape or 2, and then pinch the bottom closed, pinch the bottom so it looks like dimensional, and then just glue it into place. I like leaves. I usually like tendrils. I don't think these pumpkins are going to have any tendrils today, but you know, we've done lots of different pumpkins on our channel over the years. We love autumn around here, so we love to redo pumpkins. And I love the neutral colors of this collection. Other than the black and white buffalo check, these two little pumpkins have a very neutral palette, which I really am digging. And we're going to go ahead and put that other leaf on the other side. This is just basically, I took 4 inches of Dollar Tree's wire edge ribbon. I folded it in half. I cut sort of 2 triangles, almost like we were going to do dog ears, not dovetails, or the opposites of dovetails. You know, that what you get left over after you dovetail something, it's called a dog ear. So you got a dog ear both sides, and then we opened it up, pinched in the middle, cut it, and then pinched the ribbon to make a three-dimensional leaf. I think they came out really cute. And just glue one on each side. Now Dollar Tree's wired burlap, not burlap, jute cord would make really good tendrils. We've made tendrils on our channel before where we've actually wrapped wire ribbon around, jute cord around wired floral wire to make them so that they stay. But that's just some things we've done. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the footage of me removing the velvet from this pumpkin, and I really am sorry, but this is one of Dollar Tree's velvet pumpkins. It was an orange velvet pumpkin. We needed the orange velvet for another project, so I don't have that, but I took out the stem, and then I cut the pumpkin in half. Why? Because it will make our lives so much easier. And you know how it is around here, guys. We like to keep it easy. We like to make it so everybody can work on a project and make it look like it took you hours and cost $1 million. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that same tube and the X-Acto knife, the box cutter, and I'm cleaning out a channel. The reason we want to do that is because a lot of yarn is going to get built up in the center of this pumpkin. Again, just to make it easier. And we want to make sure that the pumpkin will go back together when we're all done. So we're just taking the X-Acto knife and cutting channels, and then we're going to use that tube to basically just carve out a nice big hole in the center there. Okay. And now clean up. I wanted to leave this in here because I feel like cleaning up styrofoam should be a DIY. You should have how do you clean up styrofoam? What is your method? Leave it in the comments down below because I'd love to hear how you guys do it. But I prefer a wet method. This is a wipe. This is a wet wipe. I think it works the best. I think when you dry clean styrofoam, it just makes static cling. And the water of the wet wipe definitely helps cut that down. And then when I'm all done, I like to take the wipe and wipe it on my hands. Another couple of two ideas, like one's preventative, like prophylactic, is you can take a brand new dryer sheet and you could rub it on your work surface if you know you're going to work with a lot of styrofoam, and you can use that to clean up as well, and also rub that on your hands, and that keeps it from sticking as much. It keeps the static cling down on your clothes as well as the styrofoam in the surface area. So now again, I love the neutral color of this yarn. I'm just going to pull a whole bunch out. Again, being years of being a crocheter, I pull the yarn from the center so that the ball stays intact best we can. And now we're just going to start. I'm going to take a little bit of, you could secure it with a little bit of hot glue, and I wanted to start not on the ends. Okay, I know that sounds silly. Why wouldn't you start at the end? But we're going to need something to push the string against on the end. So we're going to start on the first big ridge, and we're just going to wrap. Again, this is one of those put on a movie, put on a movie, sit down, talk to your bestie while you're on hands-free headset talking to her, and just wrap the yarn. We're not going to make 100% perfect coverage, and I'll show you how we're going to fix that at the end. But if you feel like it's getting too much, like if the space, the hump of the pumpkin is too wide, then you can go ahead and leave it, and we'll show you how to fix that at the end, okay? But what I'm just basically doing is them in sections. I'm trying to go up about a little less than halfway up the side that I start on, and then I cross over to the other side, and I work back towards the middle of that section. Do you see that? I found that to be the most easy way to control where the yarn is going. Now fast forward to the end of the one section. I want to make sure I showed you. We are going to start like we did with the left side of the hump. But what we're going to do is actually not finish these two sections. We're going to go as far as we can, and you're going to utilize whatever hot glue you need. If you start to feel like you're running out of space or the yarn is slipping, you just throw down some hot glue, hold the pieces in place. That definitely will help. But you don't want to go all the way to the end. We're going to finish that at the end when we're going to marry our two pumpkins. Okay? Now again, just use glue whenever necessary. I like to use it on the inside of the pumpkin. It's helping keep the string from covering the cut edge. Okay, so we're just going to set that off, and we're going to repeat with the other side. Okay, now that we have the other side just about done, I'm going to show you how we're going to work to marry them together. It's see, probably the hardest part of the whole project. I know that sounds silly. I didn't leave a registration mark on my pumpkin because my holes were so different. But if you feel like you need to leave a registration mark, basically you just cut it uneven on one side, or you can take a pencil and you can mark across one side to see that you're going to match your two halves up properly. I didn't feel like I needed to do that because of the way I cut it. But if you feel like you're going to cut it perfectly in half and you want to make sure you match the right sides to the right sides, then you can go ahead and leave a registration mark, okay? So what I've done is I've put a ton of hot glue down in on top of the styrofoam, both halves, and I squeezed it for quite a few minutes. I know this is on high speed, so you can't really tell, but we squeezed it together for quite a few minutes. Now, for what we're going to do here is we're basically, I hope you can see it, I put a big dollop of hot glue into the center of the top of the pumpkin. It didn't hold quite enough, so let's hold it for a few more minutes. I put a dollop of hot glue in the center of the top of the pumpkin, and I stuck the end of a piece of yarn there, and then I made sure it was long enough to go to the bottom, and I cut it off. And I repeated that till I had a few strands glued into the top. And then, because once you're done gluing a few strands into the top, that's when you can go ahead and lay them over into the bottom and just repeat that. And that's how we're going to cover the two sides that we had to glue together. Okay. So let's see here. I like to use this as a whatever you can use to protect your hands. We use Dollar Tree's double-ended Betty Crocker spatula. This is a dowel that I actually use to paint the white pumpkin with. Whatever you feel like you need to use. Boy, this is giving. I just don't have the patience to let it sit up. Well, I do eventually. Just leave it off to the side, let it go. Maybe go to the bathroom, get yourself a drink, whatever you need to do. But basically what I was trying to say was we put a bunch of hot glue into the top or the bottom, whichever end you want to work in. I prefer to work at the top just because I can control how it's going in neat. And now I'm gluing the piece of yarn into the top, and I'm cutting it so it's longer than the bottom. And I'm doing that with several pieces at once. And then what you could do is you can lay them all down together and put glue in the bottom and then cover it like that. And it does make it go a little bit faster than doing one piece at a time. Okay, and this is probably, like I mentioned, the most difficult part of the pumpkin project is to cover these ends that are cut. So this is just me maneuvering around some doubled up loose threads just to make they lay flat and they cover nicely. Now, if you ever have like a single holiday, we'll get to that in a minute. So if you're done with this project, part of the project, and you have a single holiday, I'm going to show you how to repair that in a very similar way. Now we're just going to continue to cover this one space, and then you can see here where I have like several strands all glued into the top and how they're going to lay nicely in this space there. And I'm just going to use my fingers just to manipulate that they lay smooth and glue them into the bottom. I think this was probably the best example of how to do it, which is why I left it in on slow motion. Not slow motion, just I didn't speed it up. It's regular motion. But I wanted you to be able to see exactly how it looks and how it's working. And even like how the top and the bottom could look almost messy, but you really aren't going to notice the bottom because the pumpkin's going to be sitting on it, and the top is going to be covered with its stem so that you don't have to worry about that either. But honestly, it's really not that bad. I don't think it looks terrible at all. So, but if yours does look like a mess when you're all done, then that's okay. You're going to go ahead and put leaves on it and a stem, and we're going to cover it anyway. So that's why we like to start at the top and glue it to the bottom. All right, and then we finished on both sides, and I'll show you there's just like some holidays here, little ones here and there. And we're just going to, if you can't slide over a yarn, spread your yarn out enough to cover all that, then you can just repeat the process with single pieces, because sometimes when you spread out the yarn to cover the area that you cut, you might leave a holiday in the back or the front. So that's why you can just go ahead and take single pieces of yarn and do that same thing where you glue it into the top, wrap it around, and then glue it to the bottom. Okay. Now we're going to use for this stem, really easy, is the stem it actually came with. It came with this really cute, realistic looking dark stem. It's plastic, and we're just going to shove it right in the top where we went ahead and pulled the, started all the threads from, okay? And we're just going to have to make the hole a little bigger because it got squished. basically it got full. So we're just going to put my scissor just to make the hole a little bit bigger to get that in there. And then I'm going to use a little glue just to keep it together. I want to use it to make sure that the pumpkin stays together and the stem stays on. Now the last thing I'm going to do here in a second is I'm going to cut a leaf out of the previous fabric, the houndstooth that we used to cover the other pumpkin, and tuck it under the stem. And this way they match and they coordinate, and they're so cute and lovely, and I love them. And that's it. I'm sorry that the after picture got destroyed, but there it is now. And here's the first one. And I thank you all for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to share with friends and family, anybody who might be interested in seeing how to cover these pumpkins. And as always, you guys take care. God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye.